Welcome to Impact TV. We're incredibly excited to have Victoria Cheng from Citi Ventures here today. She's a subject matter expert in fintech and knows a lot about corporate venture and is also quite active with some diversity and inclusion initiatives. Victoria, it's great to have you here today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's see, we met each other in the Kaufman Fellows Program. I had a heck of an experience and have stayed involved with classmates and been asked to speak on occasion and just probably learn more than I ever taught in those sessions. It's been great to stay involved. Have you been able to keep in touch with some of your classmates from the Kaufman Fellows Program?
Oh my gosh, all of them. I mean, Kaufman's an organization that's been on this forefront of innovating venture capital, right? And they've identified all these great people, a really large group of diverse talent. So recently, I've actually been turning to my Kaufman family frequently to really help solve the VC industry, right, in improving the lack of diversity that we have across our investors, our founders. Like, how do we focus our Citi Impact Fund, which we launched earlier this year, on really raising up women and minority startups, right? So, we have a whole seed program dedicated to building this pipeline of venture-backable companies. Like, what else can we do, and how should we go about them? So I've been turning to those folks a lot in helping support that initiative.
You may know in my class, I was lucky enough to develop a friendship with Jeff Harbach, who now runs the Kaufman Fellows program. But I also, I think our class was one of the large, we were class 16, and I think it was one of the most inclusive with regard to corporate venture. And obviously that's been a significant trend that we'll talk about as part of today's discussion. But also, Kaufman back then was talking a bit about diversity and inclusion and has now sort of activated some of those initiatives. I know you've been quite involved with Rise Up and with Women in Venture and doing some really interesting things. Can you tell us a little bit more about the objectives of those organizations?
Yeah, so Money 2020 Rise Up, it was a program that we put together to support women in finance, right? Which, I think at the intersection of what we do, which is venture capital, technology, and finance, you kind of get a subsegment of a subsegment that doesn't really have a lot of female talent historically involved in all three of those intersecting industries, right? So the program itself was meant to bring together a cohort of these very successful, very ambitious women who were looking to grow their network, support each other, and we found that one of the best ways to do it was at the largest conference of our industry, right? So so that's really what that program is all about, and hopefully those women, even post being a part of that program, end up continuing to accelerate their careers and the careers of those that were part of their cohorts. Women in VC, I mean, this is an interesting one. So that was started in LA. It just started as a series of brunches, actually, and I think it's grown into a much larger, program than that, as almost part of the social movement that we've experienced in the last couple of years. It's probably, I expect at this point now, one of the largest global directories for women in venture capital that's out there, and it's an opportunity to find each other, connect with each other, collaborate, really promote each other's successes, right, in this industry. So, for us and for myself, I think the goal is how do we really achieve gender equality? How do we really create these equal opportunities? How do we get investors to prioritize investing in female founders? Right now, I mean, everybody knows the stats, right? So, women are starting companies, but they get less capital in their male founders, and they get $77 for every $100 that a male founder raises. The average male entrepreneur over time gets 4x more money. Now, it's great if female founders are just that much more efficient, but I think it's also very likely that the disparity exists because access to capital isn't always equal, right? So we're really focused on that through our Citi Impact Fund. Citi Ventures itself, we've invested obviously in a lot of women-led companies like Zoom and Second Measure. We recently, just last week, invested in the Mom Project. And we're doubling down, right? So we have this impact fund we're upsizing to $200 million. And the whole purpose is, how do we help to solve some of society's really key challenges, right? So our 4 areas of focus are around sustainability, upcycling, recycling, water, energy, investing in the future of our environment. It's about financial capability, financial inclusion. It's about infrastructure, so our healthcare system, affordable housing, transportation, really investing in the future of our communities. And then it's about workforce development, right? And here I think, this is a large part of where diversity really comes in. So how do we upskill, reskill our population? How do we increase diversity in the workplace? What are the technologies necessary to increase diversity in leadership and really provide those job opportunities, right? And those economic opportunities. So at the end of the day, it's about how do we invest in our nation's people, right? So we're really making strides through those efforts.
With regard to onboarding more women into leadership positions in the venture ecosystem, I've seen people like, Kate Mitchell do some amazing things at scale, and rise up all the way to the chairman role at the NVCA. Gayatri was in my class at Kaufman Fellows. You may know her. She runs an AI fund at Micron with a team there. I'm sort of looking at the traditional VC industry and the corporate venture industry. Do you think that corporate venture may be an onboarding sort of path for more women in venture? How do you see sort of, the ecosystem onboarding more of the talent that are women, so we don't have sort of so much talent sitting on the bench, not in the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it also comes down to network, right? So it happened to be that there are a good number of CVCs that have women investors, and as a result, you end up having more CVCs that are female investors that come after that. Really interestingly enough, so our CIO a long time ago was asked, how come you have so many women investors in Citi Ventures, and like, was that intentional? And she said, I didn't specifically go out searching for female investors. I just hired the best people I knew, right? And I think that's reflective of like, what do your networks look like? And if your GPs are all, very similar backgrounds, then it can be more difficult to access other types of networks. You have to make the effort to do so, right? And similarly, I think that, when it comes to GPs, the LPs play a really big role as well, right? So are you as LPs that are out there thinking about investing in more diverse GPs? And that can be oftentimes the first step to bringing on more diversity into venture capital and the venture ecosystem.
Most VCs that I know have had a long and windy path to getting to their current position. I actually, you may know that I helped to manage the private equity and venture portfolio for Oracle prior to launching Impact Venture Capital with Eric Ball, my now partner, who's also a Kaufman Fellow. Let's talk a little bit about your journey. How did you make your way to Citi Ventures?
Oh gosh, so I actually started at Citi. I'm a boomerang back into the company. I started on Wall Street. I was a banker there, became a private equity investor, and then somehow stumbled my way into startups, right? And then that sort of became the beginning of the end. Like, I was hooked. I was passionate about venture investing specifically because of the impact that it can have, right? These companies, they're creating something from nothing with an effort to change the way in which we live our lives, right? And that's really, really powerful. And it's incredible to be able to work with those types of individuals. So, how did I end up at Citi Ventures and in fintech? I would say that it was, again, part of this interest that I personally had in this alignment of making money and doing good, right? And so I was searching for industries where that had a really good overlap. And financial services at the time, because this is almost like a decade ago now, it's 8 years ago, was ripe for disruption, right? So, and technology could have the ability to make access to financial services a lot easier, make it cheaper, make it faster, and make it just all around a better experience, right? So it just had a wonderful alignment between being good for people and being good for business. And that's really what I wanted to work in. So I ended up working for actually a fund that was focused on financial services for what we call the emerging middle class, called Core Innovation Capital. And then from there, came into Citi Ventures to build out, this platform with like the incredible leaders that we had here.
We're interacting now with more than 100 different corporate venture groups with a variety of objectives around their programs. Some are just looking to access sort of market insight and new industry trends. Mm-hmm. Others are looking at acqui-hires to be able to acquire technical talent. Some are looking at sort of crowdsourcing innovation and certainly looking to generate an investment return. And some are just looking to make acquisitions at some point down the line and get early looks into companies. When you look at the objectives of the corporate venture program at Citi Ventures, what are the things that sort of drove the activity or driving the activity now as a priority for the overall corporation?
Yeah. So Citi Ventures, we were founded back in 2010 at this point, I want to say. Yeah, it was 2010 by this woman named Debbie Hopkins, who's, was Citi's first chief innovation officer. And our goal today is the same as it was from day one, right? And it's all about how do we engage and partner with the startup community in order to better serve our clients, right? And when I think about that, it's everyone's bringing in something different, right? Citi brings scale, we bring expertise, startups bring in new technologies, new models, and together we're building the future of financial services, right? And that's really the end goal. So, how do we bring these new capabilities to more individuals and more businesses?
And for entrepreneurs that are watching this, or even co-investors that are looking to, regularly co-invest alongside of Citi, can you tell us a little bit more about the investment thesis, maybe by stage of company that you're targeting, typical check size, how you engage with the entrepreneurs or the company to add value post financing, those types of things?
Yeah, so we are stage agnostic. So our mandate is to be able to invest in anything across all stages, from Series A to Series E. We've done it all, right? And when we think about, the check size, that's really corresponds to that, right? So it might be a $3 million check, might be a $15 million check. It totally depends on what the company needs at that point in their life cycle. I think more importantly for us than stage is actually the specific industry that the company is in. So we're looking for strategic investments, right? And as a result of that, we're looking for companies that really can touch the ecosystem of financial services. So that means we're obviously investing in fintech companies where they're looking at new business models in banking, in lending, in wealth management, in capital markets, in trade and treasury services, all different kinds of financial capabilities, right? We're looking at e-commerce and payments, ways that we can better engage consumers so that we can provide a much more improved commerce experience, right? Whether that is leveraging new payment rails or new payment infrastructure. We look at, on the enterprise IT side, how do we leverage technologies so that we can build better solutions ourselves at Citi for our clients? So that encompasses everything from data and analytics to machine learning. It encompasses security and enterprise IT. It also includes customer experience and marketing. How do we better acquire, retain, engage, and serve our customers and create really remarkable client experiences, right? And then we just started a new vertical as well, which is prop tech. And so how do we invest in creating new innovative technologies and products and business models for the real estate industry, right? So we look, we're always interested in investing in great entrepreneurs, people who are building great products, who are executing, who have great teams, and who have models that we want to help support.
Well, with regard to industry sectors, you may know we're big fans of artificial intelligence and looking at how it applies to various verticals. I mean, we sort of in the early days of the internet, you sort of had this interesting technology that then was being applied to a variety of business markets, a variety of consumer markets. Now I feel like it's everywhere, right? AI is similar. It's so broad that we're kind of looking at the convergence of AI and security, or the application of it to security, AI and robotics. If I look across our portfolio, we're looking at sort of AI almost applied to every industry sector. So I'm interested, are there areas within fintech where you see artificial intelligence is a really an interesting area of innovation that's highly relevant to Citi?
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely care a lot about artificial intelligence, and we actually care about it in two different ways, right? So I think the first is around just, we as Citi want to be able to leverage machine learning, AI internally for ourselves, right? As we think about decision making, risk management, as we think about, even just marketing and better serving our clients, right? So that we can make sure that our products are more personalized. And so there, it's about infrastructure, right? So that infrastructure we want to be able to build that enables us to leverage the data that we have in order to do all of those things. So that's companies, like Immuta, companies like Anaconda, companies like DataRobot. We've invested in a number of these types of companies, right? I think on the other side, which is much more customer facing, we're interested in companies that are serving consumers or businesses, right, directly with products that they've built on top of AI. So, And that's really companies like FeedZai, right, where they've applied artificial intelligence specifically for fraud in transactions of financial services firms, right? We are interested in companies like Digit, right, where they're using their models in order to figure out, okay, for a consumer, how much should you actually be putting into a savings account versus a checking account, and like automatically just provide those, those not just suggestions, but be able to do that for you, right? So I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for artificial intelligence inside of financial services, and that's really an area that we're spending a lot of time looking at.
Let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurs. And we had an entrepreneur, speaking of identifying sort of things like fraud, waste, and abuse applied to government programs. He had some interesting AI technology at a company called Pondera that was recently acquired by Thomson Reuters. So we were quite excited about that exit for the fund. But this entrepreneur had some characteristics that I thought were interesting. He was a subject matter expert in some problems in a large market opportunity. He had invested a lot of time and his own money into kicking off the venture and actually getting it almost all the way to cash flow positive on his own. That doesn't happen very often, but obviously tremendous skin in the game. I think the persistence and the conviction around the opportunity and the fact that he was creating something that was making the world a better place was something that was interesting. Those are some of the characteristics that we seem to see across entrepreneurs in our current portfolio. What of those resonate with you? Are there others, as you think about the characteristics of winning entrepreneurs, sort of how would you describe sort of those entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial teams that you get most excited about from a Citi perspective?
Yeah, so I think when we're looking at investing in companies, there's really two things, right? There's the company as it relates to the entrepreneur, the capability to build a venture backable business and eventually exit. And then there's also the match with working with Citi as an organization and as a partner, right? And so I think from a VC perspective, when we look at investable entrepreneurs, a big part of that is also, can that entrepreneur sell you on their idea, right? So a lot of the business that an entrepreneur is in is convincing, customers to buy their product, convincing partners to work with them, convincing investors to invest with them, and then also convincing employees to join them, right? So I think that's a big part of what makes somebody exciting is can they pull that team together? Can they get the market excited about them? Can they get investors to put capital towards their business and continue to grow that company? I think that's another feature that we look for in our entrepreneurs. And then I also look for entrepreneurs who are just, to your point, right, exceptionally curious about their industry, about learning, about making their products better, because that shows in this growth mindset that, hey, if I come across a new piece of information that might be counter to what I was doing before, like I'm going to take that to heart and actually do something with it that's gonna improve the business itself, right? So I think all of that becomes really important. And then in addition to that, because we are a large global multinational bank, we also look for entrepreneurs that are able to work with a large enterprise like ourselves, right? So, they oftentimes at the time that we're investing have gotten to a certain type of scale. They know how to work with, and honestly, a large part of what we do at Citi Ventures is help guide entrepreneurs, right? Through that process of, you have to identify the right individuals within the organization. You have to understand like the different processes within an organization, how to navigate that organization, and really, contribute that to their ability to build a partnership with us, right? So we do look for those types of capabilities as well.
It's interesting to find a common vocabulary between a 20-person company and a 200,000-person company, right? And figure out ways to collaborate. And I think corporate venture, corporate venture capitalists, I think are providing a valuable bridge for, sort of understanding how to scale. There's been an extraordinary rise in corporate venture over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Maybe you could speak to your perspective on that. I think corporate venture is now participating in 1 out of every 3 venture-backed deals. And it just sort of seems like, January I attended a conference where there was more than 1,000 corporate venture capital firms represented there. It was, there's just been this extraordinary rise. What's your view on that trend and what might happen going forward?
Yeah, so absolutely, corporate venture is increasing dramatically, right? And I think it creates a number of opportunities for entrepreneurs and also for large companies. So I think for entrepreneurs, you now have access to different types of capabilities, right, than just your traditional venture capital firms. There's distribution opportunities, there are technology opportunities, there are different types of partnership business development opportunities that become available through corporate venture, right? And when it comes to, what does the future look like? I think it depends, right? So there's always ebbs and flows within corporate venture capital. For us, we're very much committed, and we're actually, we've obviously increased the amount of capital that we're dedicating towards venture capital. But it depends on like the purpose, right? So I think unlike traditional venture firms or sort of financially focused only venture firms, right? The reasons you launch a corporate VC can differ dramatically from one organization to the next. So for some, it might be more about understanding technologies and R&D development and a really cheap way in order to engage in that, right? For others, it's an M&A pipeline. For others, it might be more about strategic partnership and commercially driven opportunities for their larger corporate partner. There's a very wide spectrum of what that looks like. And so depending on the environment, that can come and go as the environment changes, right? So I think TBD as far as what's going to happen in the future. I think right now, we're seeing some corporate firms pull back, and we're seeing others really double down, right? So it'll the environment is always ever changing.
Speaking of changing environment, I mean, COVID-19, we look at our across our portfolio, and I'd say about a third decided to sort of cut headcount and apply for PPP dollars and effectively try and figure out a cash flow strategy that enabled them to sort of endure 2020 and sort of just get through the calendar year. I'd say 2/3 there was a bit of an acceleration to the innovation curve, where there was more interest from customers and more interest from investors because of the industry sector that they were in, either operating, virtual collaboration or, something else. How has COVID-19 impacted your outlook or strategy for the balance of 2020 and going forward?
Yeah, I mean, we've taken, the perspective that, look, like this is going to be something that lasts for a while, right? And so we want to be investing in things where either COVID-19 doesn't have much of an impact, or even better, if it actually is an accelerant, right? So our most recent investment, for example, is in a company called the Mom Project, which was all about how do we bring in women and match them into jobs at some of the best companies that are out there in roles that actually are suitable for them, from the perspective of what they want out of a job, right? And oftentimes that means flexible work or remote work. And before we invested, one of my big concerns was, okay, are there companies that actually are going to put in infrastructure so that you can have more job opportunities, right? And post COVID, I mean, I think those opportunities are going to increase, right? Every single large company now, or large and small company, now has the technology infrastructure, the process infrastructure for remote work, right? We're doing this on Zoom video right now. So I think a lot of the barriers that might have existed before have really come down dramatically, and so that's a great positive for them, right? We have other companies that are focused on e-commerce, and that's been a huge win for those companies as many more retailers end up moving online at a pace that is faster than they otherwise would have planned for, right? Within the Citi Impact Fund, we're spending a lot of time looking at companies that are helping us to get back to work. So we actually have a competition out right now called Restarting Together, where we're looking and we're sourcing companies that are going to enable us to actually get back to work, right? So how do we go back to work safely? And then I think at the end of the day, right, there's going to be companies that are going to be inside of healthcare that are going to be super interesting. So that's a big area of focus. Actually, I was just on another call before this, going through our health tech thesis at the Citi Impact Fund, right? And so what are the areas that we want to be investing in as we come out of this?
With the last few minutes of today's interview, I want to ask a couple of sort of personal and professional development questions. In the venture industry, oftentimes we're, managing firm operations. We've got a portfolio of companies, board roles, but then there's also sort of this, sort of how do you stay sharp on industry trends and sort of sharpen the saw, if you will. Can you talk a little bit about sort of time management, professional development, and what you do to sort of, succeed in your industry sector and play the thought leadership role that you're playing with regard to diversity and inclusion?
Oh, and time management. I can tell you that there's just not enough time in a day. That's the truth of it. Look, I think that just comes down to prioritization, right? There are things that we want to accomplish and ways in which we are looking to leverage, the time that we do have. So a lot of the work that I'm doing now is thinking about, okay, what are the, how do you hack your life, right? Like, what are the capabilities that you can use to better use the time that you have, right? I'm actually searching right now for, how do you do like a dual opt-in intro for just from your contact list that like auto fills, like I don't have to do anything. Like that's sort of one of the top things that I'm thinking about these days. But yeah, I mean, look, like there's only so much time, right? In life, there's the only thing that's really limited.
Well, you seem to be doing a good job of finding synergy or leveraging your time across various initiatives where maybe you're getting multiple elements of value from single investments at a time. So I'm impressed with how many things you are involved with and with the leadership role that you're playing in the industry and with some of the organizations that you're driving forward. Let me ask a question on the personal front. I'm always curious as to how people start their days, sort of life routines, something you do each day or something you do in the morning to sort of kickstart your day and sure you're sort of bringing your A game and you're, living sort of a conscious and proactive life as opposed to sort of, letting life come at you. Is there anything that you do in the spirit of experience sharing and best practices? Is there anything that you find that you do in the morning or that you do on a regular basis to sort of, bring your A game to life each day?
So you'll be the first person I've actually told this to. So I have a young son. He's about a year old now, and so we do yoga in the morning, and then we actually have a family cheer that we do together, and we say it together, and it gets us pumped up for the day. That's how we start our day.
I love it. I love it. Thanks so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. Last question for you. Any interesting blog posts, podcasts, any other publications that you would strongly recommend, something that you read on a regular basis or listen to on a regular basis that you think might be helpful for entrepreneurs or venture capitalists or corporate venture capitalists?
Okay. These days, I'm actually reading a lot more books than anything. So it's, what did I just finish? I finished, actually, I should forget about that one. Actually, what I just started rereading again, and it's old school, but it's my favorite form of content, is Guns, Germs, and Steel. So pretty timely, if you ask me. That's where I'm at right now.
Great. Victoria, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate the perspective on business and on life. Thanks so much for sharing some of your time today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.